the planet right now, we're almost in a phoenix phase, where the phoenix, everything is dismantling, everything is coming apart, everything is coming down, all the systems, there'll be businesses that are going to collapse, there's going to be all kinds of things. But with that, of course, brings the good, because you can't have the dark without the light. You can't have the light without the dark. You can't have the positive without the negative, right? So it's our job to see the benefit and why everything is collapsing. Because I really feel like Mother Nature is like, time out, like last time I felt like this was during COVID, when you'd sit in your backyard and there were no planes. Nothing. I don't know what it was like in Australia, but we live on the water, and all of a sudden we could see all the stars. There was no light pollution. The animals were coming back into our harbor. The fish and the whales and everything were coming back, and it was like she was taking a breath and breathing. And I kind of feel she's cranky right now.
Welcome to the Numerology Show. I'm your host, Hayden Crawford, and today I'm joined by a true powerhouse in the world of numerology, Ann Perry. Now, over two decades of experience and a devoted global following on YouTube, Ann is renowned for her intuitive, heart-led approach to numerology and her ability to decode life's purpose through numbers. She blends deep spiritual wisdom with grounded practical insights to help others find clarity, direction, and meaning in their soul journey. So in today's episode, we're going to explore how numerology can illuminate your karmic debts, soul contracts, and personal timing, and how you can align your life with your highest potential using the sacred language of numbers. So thank you so much for being with me today, and it's a genuine pleasure having you here.
Oh my goodness, Hayden, thank you so much for including me in your podcast. I was thrilled when you reached out. So I hope I can live up to that wonderful introduction.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. It's it's a genuine blessing. And I guess my first question for you today is your first aha moment that made you trust numerology. What was that? Was it more than just numbers?
Wow. So I've always been a bit of a woo-woo junkie. I've always had sort of an interest in all kinds of things related to numerology or astrology or tarot or any of those kinds of um, spiritual kind of studies. But what really got to me was when I looked back on a cycle that I had gone through. I didn't know it was a cycle at the time. But when I started really diving into numerology, I discovered something called an essence. And the essence is not something that many numerologists even talk about. And it was fascinating to me because 2003, I just did a nosedive. Like it was a really, really bad year for me. It was a six personal year. Sixes tend to bring in a lot of domestic drama. I was looking to leave my home, my family, my husband. I mean, I was just absolutely miserable. But what I learned was that there was this essence, okay, which was called a 19-1 essence, had a big karmic debt punch to it, um, that was causing me to sort of spiral out of control and have a miserable time. And I thought, man, like if I'd known going into it that it would start here, but that it would finish there, I would have gone through it very differently. But when you're in the dark and you're in the hole and there's no light in sight, it's a pretty dark place to be. So that completely sealed the deal for me. There's just no way I couldn't share that with other people because there's too many people suffering who don't know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I like to take people back in time to say, hey, remember back in 2020 or whatever, remember you kind of in a bit of a rocky place? Well, yeah. Okay, that's kind of where you're at right now. And remember how you got out of it at such and such a time? Yeah, well, you're going to get out of it too. So it gives them hope, right? We can apply the experience.
So could you elaborate a little bit more about what that was that caused that that sort of aha?
That caused that essence.
Yeah.
So um, most numerologists believe that our personal year begins January 1st and ends December 31st. And that is the type of numerology that I observe, right? I'm not saying that astrologers are wrong when they say that it goes from birth date to birth date. who can prove one way or the other which way is correct, right? So we have to kind of go with what feels right. This method, January to December, feels right for me. But that's only one piece. There, are, as you know, there's 9 years that we look at in the 9-year epicycle related to numerology, and each one has a different theme. So I like to look at those years as black and white templates. So, for example, if you and I are in a 5 personal year at the same time, I'm going to say, Hayden, you and I are going to have a very similar experience. A 5 is a 5 is a 5, right? It's about our freedom, expansion, change, unexpected events. But you're going to go through it very differently than I am. And that's because your name on your birth certificate is different than mine. And that creates what's called the essence. So I want you to think of the essence as like the color that we're now going to throw against that black and white template. And now it brings it up um, more personal for you, more personally for you. So I can really dial it down. Like I can't even imagine not knowing the essences because it was such a deal breaker for me. So the essence is based on your birth name. Okay. And there's quite a long method to figuring it out. It's not difficult, but it's extremely time consuming. So I confess I do use a program to do it. But it's so telling. Like, it's just so fascinating when you can look back on your life and go, oh yeah, that's exactly where I was at. That's what I was feeling. So
That's
yeah.
that's brilliant. Well, it sounds intriguing. So, is that part of Pythagorean numerology, or is it a different form
Mhm.
of numerology?
Yeah, definitely Pythagorean. I don't know if it's observed in Chaldean. I've never really explored that, but um, it's something that I was introduced to through the work of Matthew Oliver Goodwin, who was a master numerologist back in the 80s before he passed.
Mm.
So
That's so
yeah,
interesting. That's intrigued me. I want to find out what mine is now.
there you go.
So, how do karmic numbers show up differently in people's lives based on their life path?
Well, karmic numbers can show up beyond just the life path number, right? So the karmic debt numbers relate to the 13, 14, 16, and 19, and each one has a different theme to it, if you will. And so just to set the record straight, a lot of people are like, "Ooh, karmic debt, right? Oh, that's awful. I must have done something terrible." Yeah, you probably did. You kind of made a mess in a previous lifetime. But in this lifetime, when the karmic debt shows up as your life path number or your expression number, heart's desire number, day of birth number, if it shows up in any of those, it's an invitation that you made. You said, "Listen, I get it. I screwed up in the previous lifetime. I want to make amends for that in this lifetime." So we choose to bring it in. And depending on where the karmic debt sits, will determine what it applies to. Okay, so for example, a karmic debt of 16.7 in an expression number would imply that you're probably going to blow up your career a few times. Okay, this because the 16.7 is about sort of the crash, the burn, the learn, right? It's the rise and the fall of the ego. And the expression number relates to your vocation and what you've chosen to do with your life, your talents and your gifts. So when I see it sitting there, it's like, that's a bit of a red flag around their career. Now, if I saw that 16.7 as the heart's desire number, I'm going to be like, this person has been divorced, right? Or if they haven't, it's kind of like, wait for it. I certainly, I don't want to plant that seed with anybody, but wow, the stats are in, right? And those of us who have karmic debts in the heart's desire, or 16.7 karmic debt in the heart's desire position, definitely usually have struggles in relationships. And it can also show up in cycles as well. When we talk karmic debt, it can show up as a karmic debt personal year, like you might be in a 13.4 personal year rather than just a 4. So the 13.4 would imply that you're going to experience obstacles after obstacle after obstacle, right? And it's up to you how you choose to approach those obstacles and turn them into opportunities rather than seeing them as limitations. There's life path periods, there's pinnacles, there's all kinds of other places that karmic debts can show up.
That's so interesting, and I love that. And I know we were talking about the number 16 specifically just before we started recording today, because it's something we have in common. And,
Yes.
because it's my day number and it's your
Mhm.
life path number.
Yes.
So, in those cases, like, how does it show up as if it's your day number, for example?
Well, it's basically it's very similar. It's a not quite as an impact as what the life path number is, but the day of birth is actually a sub lesson to the main lesson. Okay, so the main lesson is the life path number. Um, so when I look at, actually, I kind of want to back it up a little bit, Hayden, if I can.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
when I first learned numerology, I was taught to simply add the numbers straight across. Okay. And when you do that with my date of birth, I come up as a 30 as the number 34, and 3 and 4 equals 7. So that means that this 7, which I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, I am a 7. I've known that my whole life, or felt like it anyways. But as a 34/7, my sub lessons would relate to the number 3, which would be all about learning how to communicate, have a bit of a better sense of humor, bring in some imagination, be a little bit more social. I had all that, right? That didn't really resonate with me. And the 4 is about being detail oriented and being, somebody who likes to create foundations and plans and such. I don't have any issues with that. So that didn't really speak to me, but the 7 did. When I learned the methodology that came from Matthew Oliver Goodwin, where Matthew says break down each piece of your date of birth. So your day would come down as a single digit or a master number. The month would come down single digit, master number, and the year the same. And then you add up those reductions. In that way, I came up as a 16/7, which means now that I have the sub lesson of the 1, which says I had to learn how to be independent rather than codependent. I had to learn how to be more of a leader. I needed to tap into my creative potential and find a way to inspire people with it, and just overall become a more courageous leader and somebody who is more of a pioneer, if you will. And then we look at the 6, and the 6 relates to issues related to responsibility. And God knows it wasn't because I wasn't responsible. It's because responsibility became my drug of choice. Because the 6 says our self-esteem is sometimes a little shaky. And so what do? We overcompensate by being of more service to the point where we become of servitude quite often, you know. So I was learning lessons related to that. The 6 is also about perfectionism. And then the 7, of course, is being the head. I call it affectionately, and you're a 7, or you've got your 16/7 in there. But I call the 7 the head case number, because truly it is, right? We're in here, we're thinking all the time, and we always do what we think we should do, not what we feel we should do. That's why we run into trouble. But at the end of the day, the 16, as you know, holds not just the sub lessons of the 1 and the 6 that I hope you can identify with, but also the karmic debt, right? Oh my, drum roll. The karmic debt implies that we did a lot of bad things, in our previous lifetimes, where we betrayed people. Maybe we slept around a little bit, cheated on our lovers, cheated on our spouses. We weren't very faithful. And so issues related to trust will surface in this lifetime because we've agreed to pay back the bad behavior, right? That's our goal. So what I have found, my experience has been that those of us who have the 16/7 karmic debt are either going to cheat again in this lifetime, or we will be cheated upon, or we will have unusual paranoia, like, where were you? Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you text me? You said you'd be home, and all this sort of thing. Or you attract that kind of a person, or you get judged for crimes you didn't commit. So, I mean, how long do you have? This 16/7 is, brings in a lot of stuff that we need to work through. I'm not sure if you
Yeah.
can identify with that.
Oh, all of it. Yeah, completely. Yeah, definitely. I've always had like an irrational fear that I'm either going to lose everything all of a sudden or be betrayed. And,
Yeah,
but I'm lucky, I think, in a way, because my husband's born on the same day as me. So he's born on the 16th of October, but a different year.
interesting.
So we've both got the same, sort of things going on. So we understand each
Hmm.
other. So
Hmm.
it doesn't come up as a pattern. But before I met my husband, that was my life completely. So I feel like having an awareness of it has helped me to transcend a lot of those, those insecurities, because I was a mess. I was always
Hmm.
jealous in previous relationships, of
Yeah.
paranoid that people were going to cheat on me. And of course they did.
Hmm.
And then I was probably just as bad, and it wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise me if, if I've been a bad person in a parallel previous life, it wouldn't surprise me at all. The amount of the amount of obstacles that you feel like you have to overcome, in this incarnation. So no, it absolutely resonates 100%. And
Yeah.
the other thing I just wanted to just touch upon with you again, because you mentioned what was it, the heart something number? What
Heart's
the heart?
desire or soul urge.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's the soul edge. Okay, because I know there's different
Yes.
expressions. So I just wanted to get clarity on that for anyone who's watching. That the heart's desire is the soul edge, and the other one was the expression, which is
Yes.
the outer expression.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And it's basically, when you're prior to your incarnation, you're going to sit down and give a lot of consideration to what you want in your soul agreement. First of all, you're going to choose the lessons you want to learn. And then after that, you're going to choose the vibration of the number that will best support you on that journey, as in my case, a 16-7. So you would have sent forth a message telepathically to whomever named you in this lifetime, and you would have said, listen, I don't care what you call me whatever you want. But you have to make sure that whatever you call me will vibrate at whatever the number is you choose. In my case, I chose the 5. Um, and for me, I'm very grateful that I chose the 5 because the 7, as you know, we like a lot of time by ourselves. We like to spend time by ourselves. We want to be out in nature, want to be with the animals. We want to we need our downtime. We need to kind of defrag. But the 16-7 is also the spiritual teacher that teaches through experience, through their own personal experiences, and allowing ourselves to be a little bit more vulnerable. And we share our dirty laundry when it's necessary, to keep it real. Uh, so when I chose the 5 as my expression number, that was to help me to get out of my chair, to stop meditating over in the corner and needing to be by myself all the time. The 5 brought in the talent and the gift to be able to do this kind of stuff, to do TV or radio or whatever. So
So your outer expression number is derived from the consonants within your name. So that's the way you're perceived by the outside world, right?
that's your personality number. The consonant. Now you need to get all tricky on me, aren't you? Promised you wouldn't do that.
It's just there's so many different terms for the same for different things,
Right.
in the version of numerology that I have learned, it's Pythagorean. The
Yeah.
the outer expression is where you add up the consonants within somebody's living name, and then you reduce it down, and that will obviously tell you what it is. But it's just great to bring clarity into
Yeah.
that, just for anyone
Oh,
who's watching.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So I would have referred to that as, it's like tomato, tomato, right? But the personality number in my mind comes from the consonants, but the expression number is what is the whole totality of all of the letters in your birth name. And it brings in the history, the ancestral history comes in to that, right? Because before you choose these numbers that go into your birth code, you give a lot of consideration to what you've learned. You have a conversation with your spirit guides to say, hey, let's take a look at this. I told you earlier that I lost my stepson in January, and as tragic as that was and still is, he's helping me see things so differently from the other side. And one of the things that he shared with me, which I think you might enjoy, um, he said we have a menu. Okay. I like calling it the bingo sheet. He likes to call it the menu. The menu on this menu has absolutely every possible emotion you can ever experience. Every possible experience you can ever experience, right? Is on this menu. And so every time you come and you incarnate, you're going to check off, all the things. This time around, I haven't experienced paranoia. Okay, check. I haven't experienced having an eating disorder. Check. Whatever. Uh, so until that card, he explained to me, so until that bingo card, until that menu is completely full, you can't completely ascend and evolve. And it's just a theory, okay? I'm not saying it is written in stone, but I like it. I like that theory. It just totally makes sense to me why many of us choose very challenging lives. He certainly chose a very challenging life for himself, but he also taught me that we're not all here to learn lessons. Some of us come in very difficult form to be the teachers. right? You think about somebody who's born very disfigured, or maybe they have another form of handicap. You know, uh, they're the teachers, right? They're
Yeah.
not necessarily here to learn anything. They sacrifice themselves and they come in. So when they're choosing their soul's agreement, a lot of that goes into consideration.
That's it's quite confrontational, isn't it? To think that you have to tick off this menu and get everything ticked off before you can ascend, because that means then you have to be someone who's murdered, you have to be the murderer, you have to be the abused and the abuser. It's all
Yes.
of that. You have to do all of it to be able to ascend, and it's like, oh, surely that's going to take thousands and thousands and thousands of incarnations.
I know, but you can't think of it that way because that's coming from the human side, right? You can't possibly fathom why you make the choices that you make. Like, you bring up a good point. You literally took the words out of my mouth. Yes, at one point you'll be the murderer. Yes, at one point you will be murdered. And and you more than anybody would understand this because you're a nine, right? And the nine is the form of completion, but it's also the empath, right? So the whole goal here is that there's never going to be any judgment. We get to a point where there's no judgment because I've been there, I've done it, seen it. I've got every t-shirt and every color, every emotion, every experience, got them all, got a closet full, right? So, um,
That's so
yeah.
true. Yeah, as a nine, I definitely live by non well, I try and live by non-judgment, and I beat myself up when I go into judgment because I know it's wrong. And I think
Mhm.
that the humanitarian is something that I just I relate to so much, and I love reminding myself of whenever I feel like I'm off track.
Yeah.
So it's nice that you're a double seven then. So you're a day number seven and what I call a ruling number seven. So life path and a day number seven. So the seven is really dominant for you. So
Oh, yeah.
what are the past life or parallel life implications of the number seven? Because I know, in the color mirror system that I work with, it's a turquoise bottle called Neptune. And it often brings in Atlantis as an incarnate, a parallel incarnation.
Okay.
Um, so do you, sort of see the number seven as aligning with or having implications of certain timelines, either off planet or on planet?
Um, Boy, that's a big question. I haven't really thought about that, Hayden, to be honest. I haven't really given that a lot of consideration. But I feel that our nature is to be very open, to leave no stone unturned. We're very analytical. We want to know the reasons for things. When I was a little girl, if something was bang in the house, it wasn't a pipe. Of course, that's a ghost, or whatever. But I think we're just naturally inquisitive. And I think because of this interest in everything and being very, very open to everything and being very analytical, um, it's easy for us to accept that, hey, there might be aliens, there might be, life on other planets, there might be whatever, angels or whatever it is you want to explore. But um, I do feel that the seven is somebody that brings in a lot of wisdom. They don't necessarily understand it, but there's a lot of lifetimes, not made, maybe not as many as the nine, but definitely they come in with a lot of wisdom that is a shame if they don't share it because that's why they're here. They are the spiritual teachers.
I agree. Yeah, 100% with the seven there. It says that, it's the seeker of truth, the philosopher
Yeah.
archetype. The
Yeah.
sevens are they deep explorers of the subconscious mind, and of course they love all the mystical aspects of life as well. So it's no surprise at all, Anne, that you're doing what you're doing. And I just think that's wonderful. So how can numerology help us to heal inherited family trauma then, or
Oh, wow. Yeah.
ancestral karma?
So, what I love about numerology, what really turned me on to numerology is like I came from, like most people did, came from a somewhat dysfunctional family. And, dad was the alcoholic, mom had some mental health issues. It wasn't exactly a walk in the park, although a lot of people had a lot worse. But I feel like if I'd known numerology, I would have understood where my parents are coming from. I wrote a book last year, actually. I haven't published it yet, but I wrote a book and I bring up an awful lot of the stuff from my family. And it's not to make it about me, but it's me saying, okay, you know what? I never knew that my mom was a 23/5. Okay. And so automatically when I understood that code, because that's all it is, your life path numbers, they're just codes. We can decode them, right? When I looked at that, I went, oh my God, my mom was born on the 11th day, which naturally brings in the master 11 vibration, that high vibration. They don't feel like this is their planet. They don't fit in. They feel like nobody speaks their language. Um, a little bit of anxiety that goes on, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of depression. Um, if I'd known that, I would have handled her differently. I would have understood my relationship with her differently. The fact that she was a 23/5, the two is learning how to be a partner, how to be patient, how to be more diplomatic. God love you, Mom, but that one you didn't get. And then, of course, the three, brings in that, tremendously creative person, but with the inner critic that lives on their shoulder. So, these are the sub lessons so that they have to go through to become the best five that they can be. So I feel that if we know at the very minimal, if you know what the life path number is of the person in your family, um, it just opens the doors. It just sheds light on them if you're willing to look at that. And then you can look at that and go, all right, we were never really intended to get along. You know, you're a three, I'm an eight. That's going to have some problems. We're going to have some issues there. So it's okay. It's totally okay, right?
Yeah, that's
Um,
great. So it almost brings clarity and understanding into that person's purpose and their
yeah.
personality attributes, so that you can
Mhm.
accept them from a higher perspective, which is wonderful. And you
Well,
know,
that's so true, Hayden. And I mean, I think about my grandmother who was very difficult on me. When I was 9 years old, I went to visit her, and she kept calling me the stupid child. I was there with my two brothers, and it really scarred me in a big way. It scarred me in a big way. I believe that, I married people because I didn't feel I could do any better. Married the first guy that asked me, kind of thing. I didn't have the confidence because I felt stupid. I didn't challenge myself at school enough because I felt stupid. I know differently now, but I didn't know back then. But then when I went to research my grandmother and I started looking a little bit at her chart, I'm like, of course that's what was going on with her. My behavior, she took it as a reflection of her, you know, and that if I was badly behaved, it was a poor reflection on her. She was a four, very rigid, very demanding, very structured, not a whole lot of, and that can be, I make it sound like it's a negative thing all the way, and it's not. The fours are fantastic in terms of family people. They create foundations like nobody else. They know how to create safe environments for people. I mean, there's all kinds of beautiful things. She just didn't demonstrate those, right? So it gave me the opportunity to spur me on to say, okay, what up with that? Like, why are you the way that you are? And then it doesn't become about me anymore. And that's where the healing comes from.
yeah, I love that. That's brilliant. It's so great that you can actually go right back through your
Mhm.
ancestral lineage to see where these patterns formulated, but also these belief systems as well, because
Yeah.
of the playoff between these numbers. And you made an interesting point earlier on how, you're like, well, I'm an eight and I'm a three. So how can we ever see eye to eye? And just to explain that, usually we find in numerology life path and numbers that are on the mind plane, like the three, six, and nine, tend to get on a lot better than, say,
Yes.
for example, someone who's got a two, five, and an eight on the soul plane with a three, six, and nine, or a one,
Yeah.
four, and seven, which are on the physical plane. They can have a disconnect between people that are on the mind plane, the 369, or the,
Right.
or the soul plane. So we kind of tend to find that birds of a feather flock together, and we, but also those opposites attract as well, don't they?
Well, and you bring up a good point too, because a lot of numerologists will stop there and say, "Oh, you're a three and you're a seven." Okay, so the three wants this whole social thing going on, and they talk a lot and whatnot, and the seven is like, "Ooh, you know what? I kind of like to be quiet, and I just kind of want to spend the weekends by myself." And you know, do my thing, where the three is very social. The seven says, not so much, or the seven and the six, the six is all about the family and having family reunions every weekend. And the seven's like, do that, But if their heart's desire number or their soul urge number that comes from the vowels in their birth name, if those numbers are compatible, we can quite often overlook the life path numbers discrepancies. Because if you guys are in alignment with what it is you want out of life, chances are you can make that work. So I never say to somebody, "Oh, what were you thinking?" Like that's never going to work. Because I also believe that these decisions, these marriage or relationships, whatever, these have all been established before we get here. A good astrologer can see on a natal chart when a marriage contract is up. Uh, and I found that very helpful when I went through my divorce. But
That's interesting. Yeah. So
yeah.
I think the other thing I think it's important to bring some sort of clarity into there as well is like how you get that soul urge number. Do you go by looking at the whole name on the birth certificate?
Yes,
You do.
as it was published. Yes, the
Yeah.
first, middle, last, even if you got, three or four names. I prefer to break them all down independently, right? That's how I do it. But again, and we didn't really talk about this, and you know, I used to take the stand that there's only one way to do it, right? And I was hell bent for leather that this is the way that it's done because I discovered I'm a 16/7 and that makes sense to me. So I discovered the Holy Grail and I created this great video on YouTube and it did very, very well. And then a few years later, I'm like, you know what? As I'm doing all these readings for people, now every single time when I do a reading for somebody, I do the calculations both ways. I'll calculate one straight across and I'll calculate one breaking them down independently. And in my case, it's either a 34/7 or a 16/7. So if a person comes to me and it's either 34/7, 16/7, just as an example, I'm going to sit with them and say, which feels better? I'm going to break the codes down for them and say, which feels better to you? Because you were the one that chose your life path number. I didn't. It's not about me being right. It's about making sure that I can connect the dots for you. I can lead you there and you can decide. And then you take it one step further. Well, the three and the four go into a seven. The one and the six goes into a seven. So what I've discovered in my life and with all of my clients is that sometimes the one and the six are activated and sometimes the three and the four are activated. Right? So we kind of vacillate back and forth. So I don't feel that there's any steadfast rule that says it has to be done this way. And likewise, even for the figuring out your expression numbers and soul urge numbers, there's your way, right? And that's the way when I teach numerology, I try to help people to tap into their intuition and read people intuitively rather than reading them from the book.
Hmm. I love that, Anne, and that's such words of wisdom. That's it's brilliant. That's very encouraging to a lot of numerologists who are maybe just starting out or have been doing it for years. That maybe
Yeah.
all of a sudden, they're being exposed to new information, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, I must be a fraud. I must
Right?
have been doing it wrong all this time.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I remember that, I did not go on to YouTube willingly. That was not my idea of a good time. I was working with an intuitive coach years ago, and she called me one morning and she said, Anne, your spirit guides are with me again. And I'm like, shit, what do I do now? She said, you're not listening again. I'm like, all right, fine. What do they have for me now? And so she said, well, they want you to know you have to get on YouTube. And I'm like, I'm not going on YouTube. Are you crazy? I'm not going on there to be judged. I don't want people calling me out. I don't want all the big shots calling me saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Get off. No, no, thanks very much. Have a nice day. And I hung up. And 2 weeks later, another person I didn't know called me up with the same message. Right. And so I all right, get hit in the head twice. Fine. I'll create a video. I'll put it up on YouTube. And I'm going to take it right down because it's not perfect. There's that six kicking in, right? It's not perfect. I haven't edited it. But I put it up there. And as I was watching another YouTube video to figure out how I'm going to take it down, right? I was actually kind of, because I didn't know what to do. In the meantime, the video was about 11 minutes long. People hadn't even completely watched the video, and they started um, messaging me saying, "Oh my God, I'm in tears. Like, you got me, you get me, you see me." This is, I specialize with the master number 11s. And it's like they were so blown away that somebody actually finally identified them. Um, so I couldn't take it down. I had to leave it up. But for 4 years, I suffered with the imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough, somebody's going to call me out someday, and the whole thing, right? But I have to share this with you, Hayden, because I think you're going to get it, and the listeners are going to get it. I sure hope they do. Um, I got this download one day. It was about 4 years in, and the download said, "Don't you ever worry about not being good enough. Don't worry about being smart enough. Don't worry about being experienced enough. Don't worry about being educated enough. Don't worry about letting people down. Don't worry about not meeting their expectations." Because energetically, they're only ever going to be attracted to you because of what you already know right now. Okay?
Mm,
The bigger thing you need to worry about is how long are you going to ask them to wait? Because there are people who will never go to these guys out here. They will only come to you. And there are people who will never come to you. They're only going to go to these people out there. So that eliminates the notion that there's competition. People connect with you because it's you, right? It's not a question of how much experience you have. It's that intuitive connection. I always say to people, when you reached over and you hit that book now button to book a session with me, did you do it because you were kind of hopeful I'd have something for you someday? Or did you do it because intuitively you felt that this was going to be a good fit?
mm. That's brilliant, and I love that. Absolutely. Why, what people buy people
Right.
at the
Yeah,
end of the
exactly.
day. And it's the
And
vibe
there's
that you set off, isn't it?
absolutely. And that's why I love YouTube, because it just allows you to kind of connect, and you either like the person or you don't. And that's okay, right? I'd sooner have people go, "Nah, she's not for me," and move on, than to sign up and be disappointed,
Mm,
right? So but the point is, it's just it's because it's you. These aspiring numerologists, that are worried that they're not good enough. I've been there, Hayden. You and I talked about it before we got on. It's like, oh my God, you watch somebody else's video and you're like, holy crap, I never knew that. Oh, I can't be any good. I didn't know that, right? And we damn ourselves. And yet it wasn't important for us to know that. That's why
mm,
I don't consider myself a technical numerologist, because I don't care about, I have books, I have manuals, I have programs that'll get me there, but it's how you interpret it. And the goal is to interpret and decode the numbers as intuitively as you can, and to help your clients or yourself to be able to read it intuitively, help them to tap into it. It's not about the technique. It's never been about the technique.
mm. It's
But
so true.
technique feeds the ego, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. The system that I work with, the color mirrors, it's a
Hmm.
numerology-based color therapy system. And a lot of it is by reading the information from the color that's associated with the number. So, that reveals layers of information that I can tap into during a session. And it goes, it sort of goes against Pythagorean principles in a lot of ways. Or, well, that doesn't go against it, but it sort of offers a different viewpoint on it.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I guess
Yeah.
that I've always found I've got more than enough information without having to get the information from various other parts of the birth chart.
Right.
And so I've been like, okay, so this has worked for that period of time. But I think that I'm getting to a place, I think within my own practice, where I'm looking to sort of quantum leap into the next level of my numerology awareness. And I think that's
Yes.
possibly why, like, I've been guided to do this show, because I've learned so much already from people like you, Anne, and Joy Woodward and Carrie Samuels, and all the amazing
Mhm.
numerologists. Novelli
Yeah.
Wilder, amazing Chaldean numerologist as well, and Sarah
Yeah.
Yip. So many different vantage points, and everyone does things so differently. And right back to Lynn Boes, who was one of the early numerologists, written like 16 books on numerology and
Mhm.
cosmology, and it was. it's just been enlightening to see the various different ways of doing things. So, I think as a human, we tend to go into comparison and we judge ourselves quite harshly. If we feel like somebody has more of a, sort of holistic understanding of a
Mhm.
subject. But I think, yeah, it's very important just to go give yourself a bit of a break. You're where you're at for a reason. This is what you needed to know up till that point, and there's always room for expansion.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to add to that was I remember when I first started out, everything was fascinating to me. The growth number, the maturity number, it goes on and on. Like there's umpteen things that you can look at. But by the time I was done with a reading with somebody, I was just getting dough in the headlights, right? It was just like too much, too much, too much. So sometimes I think, we have to remember that, the numbers from 1 to 9, it's a language, right? It's just learning how to speak the language. And I like to call it like plug and play, drag and drop, like a life path number is your lesson number. Like let's say it's a 5, okay, it's a lesson number of 5. But if it's your expression number, then it becomes your talent. Well, if it's your heart's desire number, that becomes your passion. But it's still a 5. It just depends on where you plug it in. So really, I think it's important to kind of tap into what is it that this person that you're reading for really, what do they need? What do they want? And usually they feel stuck, they're trapped, and I deal with a lot of the highly sensitive ones, the 11s and 22s and 33s, who feel that they have a big mission to accomplish while they're here, but they don't quite know what it is. That drives them crazy. So, trying to help them with that and to accept just being present in the moment. You're doing enough right now in this moment. But their fear is, you know, what happened? They're always tapping their watch, like, oh God, time is running out, time is running out. And they're feeling freaked out that they won't have an opportunity to complete what they said they were going to. And then the other side of it is we go on and on about the ascension process and how, those who are a little bit more energetically sensitive, they are being catapulted, especially this year. I don't know if you're feeling it, but it's like everybody is getting called to service. And the more we get called to service, the more we're leaving our tribe behind of the people that we used to know, the people we used to hang out with, the people that we used to understand. They don't fit anymore because we are ascending so quickly. Anybody tuning into this broadcast is this podcast is they're already more evolved because they're interested in this, right? So they might find themselves sort of elevating and elevating and elevating and becoming kind of lonely because everybody else is down here. And then it gets really scary for the ones that are the master numbers because they know they're intended to create something. But if they get further and further and further away from the tribe, who do they minister to? Who do they support? Who are they to be of service to? And that's very threatening.
I feel that like all the time. So I'm going through something at the moment where with the work that I do, sort of I've been building, building, building for 10 years or more now. And and then a lot of the things that I've been building are starting to fall away. And I'm left with this feeling of
Mm.
like, oh, so I have to surrender now and I have to let go of attachment to outcome. But what's next? Because next for me can't be going back into the third dimension. I can't go back into
Yeah.
like a regular day job,
Oh no.
or anything like that. So I'm just, the only thing I can do is surrender because I just don't fit in that world
Well,
anymore.
that's right, Hayden. But remember, you were born the 16th day. I mean, that's
Mm.
as little as I know about your chart. But the 16/7 says that we have to crash, we have to burn, we have to learn, and we have to reinvent ourselves. Right? We're asked to reinvent ourselves many, many times. So what is no longer serving us is naturally going to fall away from us because the 16/7s are the spiritual teachers. The crashes, I call it the crash, the burn, the learn, but that's what we learn from so that we can have something to share with others who are going to go through the same process. You're not going back. You're not going back to the third dimension. They won't let you in.
I don't want to
You're
go
far
back
too.
there. I've done it.
You're
I've
far,
I've had it.
you're far
Oh.
too evolved.
But it's really interesting though, but how that tower experience does play itself out. So,
Yeah.
I'd be interested in if you could maybe use my chart as an example,
Mhm.
for how you would, do a traditional reading for somebody and how you would
Yeah.
break it all down, just so people can see how you operate. Because, I'm feeling very drawn to the way that you do your numerology, and for me, you're very believable, and easy to understand. So I think the viewers will find it the same way.
No, I appreciate that. One of the things I really try to do is take the fear out of it, take the
Mm.
scary woo-woo out of it, and make it relatable. And that's why, you'll see me in my videos and whatnot. I do talk a lot about what I've gone through, and it's never to make it about me ever. But I will use a personal story or two to illuminate what you might be going through, right? And then we apply it to the numbers. Having said that, do you want to share your date of birth?
Yeah, I'm absolutely open to it. I'd just be intrigued, and
Sure.
specifically with, with the personal year that I'm in being an eight. But so I'm the 16th of October, and I was born in 1972. So that's the yeah, and that's it. And my full name Hayden Crawford. So I guess you'll just be looking at the birth chart. I know my full name carries the vibration of the one. And I was calculating the 16, 10, 72, and it's the 711 before you reduce it down to the nine. So there's a lot of one energy, within my name chart and my birth chart. And so, I'd be interested to learn a little bit more about how you would interpret that.
Sorry, I'm doing some calculations.
Okay.
Well, okay, there's lots of things we can look at here. Now, the first thing I would do is I would look at your date of birth, and I'm seeing, okay, right out of the gate, we're dealing with October 16th. So boom, there we are, a little red flag there. We circled the 16 because the 16 brings in the karmic debt. So that's a whole different conversation, right? So I already know I'm dealing with a much older soul because there's a karmic debt showing up just in your date of birth. Without even looking at your name on your birth certificate, I know that I'm dealing with somebody with an older soul. So if I was to add the numbers straight across, you're going to come up as the number 27, and 2 and 7 equal 9. Okay. If I break it down the way that Matthew Oliver Goodwin would have asked us to do it, October would come down as a 1 because October is the 10th month. 1 plus 0 equals 1. The 16th day is going to come down 1 and 6 is a 7. 1972 adds up to 19. 1 and 9 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. So now we have 1, 7, 1, which just adds up to a straight up 9. I don't know you well. We've only just met, but I am certain that you're a 27, 9. And I substantiate that because the sub lessons related to the 9 is the 2. This is the learning how to collaborate, to partner up with people, to do these sorts of things with podcasts. You've got 2 podcasts, right? You're the work that you do is working one-on-one in a consultative nature, right? And the 7 goes without saying, it's related to spirituality. It's always going to relate to spirituality for you. It always has. Uh, so that you can be the best 9 you can be. Now, you could have been a 36 9 had the numbers added up differently. You could have been a 45 9, but you're not. You're a 27 9. At which point I would ask, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you're just a straight up 9 with no sub lessons, or can you tap into the 2 and the 7 as potential sub lessons?
I totally tap into the 27, the two and the seven, but I actually wear it around my neck. So the
No
necklace that
way.
I've got on is number 27 in the color mirrors, and it's gold
Oh,
and
perfect.
orange. So it's my
Yes.
favorite bottle in the system as well, strangely enough, that color combination. And it's called
Yeah.
Harvest, this bottle.
Oh,
And
see?
yeah, so it's all about, being there being rewards for your soul work, and also
Hmm.
sort of planting seeds that get harvested by having
Yeah.
courage.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the 7, as I illuminated towards it before, the 7 relates to, overthinking things and second guessing things and questioning your intuition. And, people see us doing the work that we're doing, and we've been doing it for a lot of years, and they think, oh, well, it's just who they are. Well, no, we had to work damn hard to get over the self-doubt, questioning our intuition. Is that an angel talking to me, or is that my head talking to me? All of that. No, we have to work hard at it because that's the lesson we chose to learn, right? So you come by it honestly. And of course, the 9 says, I'm the fixer, right? I'm the fixer. I'm the healer, right? Even though I'm not crazy about that word because I think it disempowers others, but the idea is to resist the temptation, the inclination to be the fixer, to draw in all the broken people. Okay. The inclination is to fix them, but that, and it makes our ego feel really good, but that's not what we're intended to do. The nines are intended to help people to help themselves. You guys are supposed to be handing out fishing rods, not fish, right?
Mm.
So and that's what you do through your work, right? Through your work.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I first started out, I was being more of a servant than of being of service. But now,
Yeah.
yeah, I give people the tools to be able to empower themselves. Of course, it's a huge part of where I get my joy, is in that process, because having
Yes.
people remember that they are sovereign in their own right and that they don't need a
Yeah.
guru.
No. No, exactly. Exactly. I love that. Yeah. So, when I used to teach Reiki, I had a really crazy practice of lots of people coming in for sessions and whatnot. And my goal was always to get them to stop, even though financially it was great for me. But morally, it was like, no, I can't keep doing this. I need these people to step away from the appointment train and come into a class, you know, and learn how to do this for yourself. You can do this. I wanted to empower them with this because they can. It just makes more sense to me than feeling like I'm the only one. It's too much responsibility for starters, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
100%.
anyway, all right, let's look at something else here. So we know that you're in an eight personal year, right?
That's right.
Um, and you are under the umbrella of a nine universal year. Okay. So 2025, when we add it together, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9. So that means that regardless of where you are in the 9 year cycle, you're going to be under this umbrella of the nine. So the nine is about completions. It's about endings. It's making room for new beginnings. It's really examining what do I need to release and let go of before I can finally really move on. Um, the eight personal year typically has a lot to do with your money. It has a lot to do with your relationship to money. It might be a year when you're going to look at what you're charging your clients and saying, am I in alignment with that? Am I okay with that? Or have I kind of gotten a lot better? I'm more experienced and now I can actually charge a little bit more. Or maybe I don't feel in alignment with what I'm charging. Maybe I have to knock it back a little bit so that I do feel okay with it. But it is your relationship to the money. It's a time when you'll be asking yourself, um, or recognizing, I'm always teaching people how to treat me. So if you don't like the way that you're being treated, it's time to look at what you've been saying, or more commonly, what you've chosen not to say that implies it's okay to treat you like a doormat. Okay. So the eight is about tapping into our own personal power and our personal authority. And I like to call the eight, the year that you say, oh, well, there's a new bitch in town, and you're probably not going to like her very much, because you finally figured out that, you are valuable, and you're not going to allow people to take advantage of you. And no, you're not going to bust through that boundary because suddenly I feel worthy of setting the boundary, because that's the eight notoriously get taken advantage of because on some level they don't feel worthy of the respect. Okay. And so when we're going through this as a cycle, those are the sorts of things that come up through that cycle. Can you relate to that?
Oh, it's exactly what's going on, Anne. So it's like that whole no money, no honey sort of
Mm-hmm.
programming.
Yes.
And also, looking at the amount of stuff I do for free for people
Yeah.
and the amount of half price sessions, to engage
Mm-hmm.
people initially.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
they're not showing up for their sessions. And so it actually, it's a devaluer. So I've really
Yes.
started looking at like where all of this programming came from,
Came
and
from.
also the fears of visibility that's associated with that as well.
Yeah.
That goes back to being the protector of a secret ancient wisdom, in past or parallel
Mm-hmm.
lives, and where you've been betrayed for
Mm-hmm.
sharing your wisdom or ridiculed, as
Yeah.
or killed even, for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that seems to play its part within how visible I am a now enabling
Hmm.
as opposed to the obstacles that I create to block my wisdom from getting out there and its
Hmm.
association with the financial world, So lots of things around money, specifically this year, have come up, whereas it's not really been a massive issue up until this point. A lot of
Hmm.
the financial stuff I felt like I dealt with.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it's all fine. Everything's running smoothly. I never think or worry about money. I'm done with that.
Hmm.
Like, I've transcended those lessons. And then this year it's like, well, hang on a minute, you actually haven't, So yeah.
Well, but you are also under that umbrella of the nine that is asking you to release and let go of any of those issues, right? But it also can imply the ending to the way in which you earn your money. Okay, so you might offer two or three different types of services, and now you're looking at those services going, you know what? I'm not tapped into this service anymore. I'm going to release that one, let it go.
Mm.
So, it can definitely, it's not uncommon for someone to uh, lose a job, or make a change. Um, just it's ending to the way in which they earn their money. It could be a windfall that comes in that says, no, I don't have to work anymore. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. It's absolutely that. It's like, okay, so what am I actually really enjoying doing now, as
mhm.
opposed to doing just for the sake of
Oh,
financial gain? Because for me, like money isn't a motivator. I mean,
yeah.
I love, being able to have the freedom that it brings me, but I've got enough freedom in my life, already. I still get to do the cruises and the holidays and I
Mhm.
still get to have time at home with my dogs because I work from home. So it's
Yeah,
almost like that sort of necessity of the focus of the day being purely around the accumulation of income. It
yeah.
it's like it's almost like it feels like it's taking me away from where my heart wants me to go.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I was just thinking back to when I left the city and I moved out here to the country to be with my current husband. And I basically blew my business up. This is before I was online. And people were just coming to see me in my home. I had a home office and whatnot in the city. And I moved out here and I thought, oh, I think it's going to take me a little while. I moved into a lobster fishing community. They don't get this stuff, right? They just don't, right? Like I am living, in a completely altered universe, just in my own little community. But I was hopeful that they would kind of catch on, but they didn't. Anyway, I remember walking my dog one summer afternoon, had my shorts on, and I'm putting out my gratitudes as I always do when I'm walking, and I'm thank you for this and thank you for that. I'm so grateful for this and that. And then I finally got a little hardcore and I went, but here's the thing, right? So I don't know how I'm going to pay for my car. I don't know how I'm going to pay for my mortgage. I don't know how I'm going to put groceries on. I don't know how I'm going to, on and on it went, right? And I felt there was something, an energy of some kind that ran behind me with two hands like this and shoved my shoulders down and threw me into the ground. And and I'm sitting there thinking, great, this is great. I'm looking up at them going, okay, so, I'm being a little vulnerable here, asking for a little bit of your help, and you bitch slap me. Nice, right? And I am pissed off, right? So I go home and I get myself all cleaned up and I sit right here in this chair and I'm like, how am I supposed to do this? How am I ever going to pay my bills? How am I going to make it? And then it was like a bag of hammers hit me. And it was like, I went, oh my God, I forgot to ask, show me how I can be of service. And do you know what, Hayden? Within 3 weeks, my business blew wide open. It was insane. I'm sure they were up there going, finally, she gets it. All right, open the gates, right? Let them in. But as I'm telling you, it was hugely, hugely a big moment for me. And I learned stop chasing the opportunity to make the money, chase the opportunity to be of service, and you will always be well compensated. Always.
100%. I love that. And it's a great
Yeah.
reminder as well because yeah, definitely there'd been a little bit of I know it's almost like what Amrit Sandhu yesterday, he called it going back into alignment. So it was
Hmm.
like I'd slightly
Yes.
gone out of alignment
Yep.
and it was like because it was like everything was, it was like, well, make money while the sun shines sort of thing. And then it was like all the
Yeah.
focus was just around that. And it's like, but this isn't, it's like it reminded me of my corporate days in IT recruitment where I was making big money, and I was still
Mhm.
empty. And it was
Yeah.
almost like it felt like it was going back to that. And it was almost like that sort of being of service aspect
Hmm.
had taken a second fiddle. It wasn't that it was gone, but it was just not the mo. It wasn't the thing that was driving the machine.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I love being of service. That is the nine's purpose. It's about
Yes.
helping people,
Yes.
and I think that's why that my spiritual team have certainly been enabling this podcast to sort of happen in the same way actually that they did with my cards. So like how you were
Yeah.
saying earlier on how you had no intention of setting up your own YouTube channel, and then it was almost like it was the logical
Yeah.
next thing, and because it
Hmm.
was like a creative project that it flowed organically, and that you got the
Yeah.
two messages from two different people saying that you should be thinking about doing that. The same thing happened with those cards, and I had no intention of wanting to do a deck of cards at all, the effort, the cost, everything. And then two people, within 2 weeks said, "Oh, I've been told that you're going to be creating," they said, "an Andromedan deck of Oracle cards." And I was like, "Oh," the first time I heard it, I was like, "Oh, yeah, of course, really. I'll believe that." And then somebody else said it was a clairvoyant lady that I knew from my days of working as a psychic in Bustleton when I first
Hmm.
came out of the spiritual closet.
Hmm.
And she said, "Oh yeah, I feel like you're going to be making a deck of cards." And so it was inevitable. Then it just happened. I just
Yeah.
started. It was almost like something took over me, and I became obsessed with this project. And I completed it within 6 months. It was
Oh
done. I
my.
did everything
Amazing.
from start to finish. But
Wow.
it just shows you, doesn't it, how when you know you're being guided and then everything flows without interruption. There's no blockages or
Yeah.
obstacles ever. Everything is synchronizes. But when you're off track, or you're out of alignment, everything will just go back, back, like roadblock, roadblock.
Yeah. In my community, we have a community circle. Uh, it's an online community I have, and in the circle, we were talking today about trying to see the positive in things, and we were talking, of course, about the political issues that are going on in the United States and Canada and all around the world and such. And one gal piped up and she said, we've got to stop like complaining about that because what they need is love. What they need is support. What they need is, even if you'd love to hate this person that's creating all this trouble, um, that's not what this situation needs. And this being the 9 universal year emphasizes that. It's more about empathy. It's more about, seeing this person regardless of what your politics are, and it doesn't matter because I'm not a political person at all, but it's seeing them, meeting them where they're at. I think that's the thing this year is we have to meet each other where they're at. Anyway, long way around this conversation. I was walking today, and I was walking by one of my neighbors' homes, and they have a beautiful piece of property. We live on the ocean, and their property rolls down to the ocean. They got a sweet little bungalow there, surrounded in garbage. I mean, there's just it's everywhere. It's absolutely disgusting, all this garbage. And there I was like, oh, like what? Anyway, I won't even tell you what I was thinking. But in the moment, I paused for a second and I went, thank you for showing that to me because that alerted me to the judgment that I am the only one that can stop that. I have the power to send love to this man who obviously has some issues. I mean, he's got more beer cans in his yard than the beer store, you know. But I was able to come from that because it was being shown to me. And rather than looking at it and being judgmental and resisting it, I actually welcomed it to look at it from a different perspective to say, okay, this guy is obviously hurting. He's obviously got something going on that is causing this behavior. Rather than judging him, why can't we just look at him and send maybe some compassion?
Mm.
I get to choose how I feel about everything, right? We all do.
Absolutely.
This year
Everything
is
like that.
mirroring all that to us.
It is this year
Yeah.
specifically with that nine fiery Mars energy, and then moving into a one again next year. where I was actually, when I was talking to Carrie Samuel, so I don't know if
Mhm.
you know her work, but she's an
I love
astrologer.
Carrie. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but she's fundamentally a numerologist. A lot of people think she's an astrologer only, but she's actually really more of a numerologist with a very being very good at astrology. And
Yeah.
she was saying about how, when you look at the numerology and astrology together for next year, it's almost
Hmm.
like, because of all the planets being in different houses and stuff, it's almost like you're going back into your own house and
Hmm.
somebody's redecorated your house. That's how
Yeah.
significantly different it's going to feel. Do you do
Yeah.
you have that same sort of intuition about next year?
You know what? I honestly, I mean, I'm so wrapped up in this year and watching everything transpire this year. I haven't even really ventured into what I feel is going to happen for next year. But I do believe that uh, the planet right now, we're almost in a phoenix phase, where the phoenix, everything is dismantling, everything is coming apart, everything is coming down, all the systems, there'll be businesses that are going to collapse, there's going to be all kinds of things. But with that, of course, brings the good because you can't have the dark without the light. You can't have the light without the dark. You can't have the positive without the negative, right? So it's our job to see the benefit and why everything is collapsing. Because I really feel like Mother Nature is like, time out, like last time I felt like this was during COVID when you'd sit in your backyard and there were no planes, nothing. I don't know what it was like in Australia, but again, we live on the water and all of a sudden we could see all the stars. There was no light pollution. The animals were coming back into our harbor. The fish and the whales and everything were coming back. And it was like she was taking a breath and breathing. And I kind of feel she's cranky right now. But that next we're going to go through so much as Carrie will say it as well. Like you ain't seen nothing yet compared to what's coming. I believe the 29th of May is supposed to be some huge reckoning of some kind, but there's a lot more axes to drop before it's over. And I believe in a good universe, and I believe that this is all very necessary. This has to happen. So my job is to, if I'm going to live in it, I want to see the positive benefits from it and always be awakened to that and show grace and gratitude for the crap that we're facing and trust. You and I were 16 sevens. One of our biggest lessons is to learn how to surrender and trust to something bigger than ourselves. And we have a tendency to overthink things. We stay a little too far in our heads, and that's when that happens. It's because we're not plugged in enough. So it's a nice reminder. But in answer to your question, I think next year is going to, I don't know that it's going to take off in terms of new beginnings and whatnot, but I do believe the healing is going to happen this year. Um, I do believe that there'll be a lot of healing that's happening this year that will line us up better for next year.
Hmm. Well said. I love that. It's absolutely true. Just the healing first and then the change. And whatever it
Uh,
is for our purposeful good, because we don't live in a punishing universe. We actually,
no,
everything is happening for the collective rather than,
yes, absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think about, I think about me and my ex-husband, we went through obviously a bad patch and we dissolved our relationship. It all came crashing down very, very quickly, actually. Almost an overnight decision sort of thing. It was very, very difficult, but we have worked together and mended our fences and we are great friends now. And that's kind of how I see what's happening with this year and next is, we're all being asked. We're all being woken up. We're all being shaken out of our boots. Every morning we wake up and look at the news and it's like, what? Like this, what? But it's a wake up call. We're all going through a bit of a wake up call. And for an example, given the strained relationship now between Canada and the United States, us as Canadians, we're very, very cautious about what we buy right now. And we're trying to keep it in Canada. Not to say that we're against the U.S. We're not at all against the U.S., but the imposition of all the tariffs and whatnot. I don't want to get into all the politics, but um, it's a good thing. Like this is, out of something negative comes something very good. The Canadians are finally going, oh, wait now, we make this here. I should buy it from my neighbor, or I should support the local farmer, or I should, you know, um, so it's keeping it at home. And so out of something kind of crappy is something really good is happening.
That's
You
right.
just have
Through
to
the
look for it.
darkest times or the most difficult times, that's where the diamonds are born or created or
That's it.
whatever they say. It's this,
Yeah.
um, the cracking open period, which always something magnificent is born of, and that's the
Yeah.
payoff. I think
Yeah.
is of going through Amrit Sandu called it the dark night of the mind, not the soul. He goes,
Yes.
the soul doesn't go through the dark night because the soul is
Mhm.
light. It's the mind um,
Right.
that takes
Right.
you
Well
into the
said.
depths. Yeah.
Yeah. I love
So,
that.
so you've built a really large online following, and how do you then stay energetically aligned when you're working in such a public space?
Wow. That's such an interesting question. Um, I just, I just do me. I don't, I, I just do me, and that's how I stay grounded. If I screw up on a video or whatever, I'll be like, "Oh, that's kind of screwy, isn't it?" We just keep on going. What you see is what you get, and I try to stay as grounded as I possibly can. Um, I, I don't tend to suffer too much ridicule because, again, I believe that only those who are really going to connect with me will even follow me anyway. So I don't really have too many poor experiences. They're all pretty good. Even if it's a challenging one, it always turns out really well. So yeah, I mean, I'm very blessed to have the following that I do. Uh, Tremendously blessed, really.
Oh, that's
Um,
beautiful. I'm so pleased to hear that because, sometimes when you do this work that, you do open yourself up to, people's criticisms and judgments and everything. So for you to feel so supported and,
that's awesome.
it's
Yeah.
it's amazing. I'm truly delighted to hear that. And is there anything about your personal chart then that that you would like to reveal about yourself, some aspects of your chart that you've discovered that's maybe, either been really highly uplifting for you or has created sort of trials and tribulations along the way.
You want my dirty laundry, don't you?
Not all of it, just a bit.
All right. Um, just recognizing or learning or identifying is a better word. Identifying with my life path number of the 16-7. Um, when I was 20 years old, I graduated from university and I was dating a guy that was about 10 years my senior. Was I planning on marrying him? Hell no, right? But he was a good guy, right? He was the rebound guy, but he was a good guy. And my mother, she was not particularly well at the time. She was quite depressed, actually. And I was moving from Toronto to Halifax, which is about 1,500 miles away. Last kid to leave. And she came to me and she said, if you're kind of thinking about getting married, you might want to consider doing it before you leave because it'd be a lot less expensive to do it, now and rather than having all these phone bills and trips back and forth and blah blah blah. And you got to know, my mother had some really serious issues, and I was always tiptoeing around eggshells to do the right thing. So she played the guilt card, and therein comes in my six of the 16-7 that said, "Oh, I always have to do the right thing by my family, always." So I agreed, and I got married. And it was the wrong thing to do, absolutely the wrong thing to do, because within 3 years it collapsed, right? But, and I honestly, the 16-7 will often blow up their relationships. There's a reason why I'm sharing this, I promise, in a roundabout way. But the 16-7 will often blow up their relationship. And it might come from an affair. And that's exactly what happened. I was 23 and I went back to an old boyfriend and I had an affair. And I'm not proud of it. But it is part of the journey of many of the 16-7s. Not going to happen for everybody. Like, this is not a blanket statement here, but this is how it played out for me. So, of course, we separated, we divorced and whatnot. Like, why would he stay with me? Even if I wanted to stay, I betrayed him, as I had my previous lifetimes. So moving forward, I get married again. Why did I get married again? Because the one of the 16-7 kicked in that said, I'm not confident enough with which to raise my son by myself. So I got married again. Was married for 27 years. After 27 years, I was actually shown who my soulmate was. And it was very, very quick, like literally overnight kind of a thing, where I recognized that my boss was actually my soulmate. I'd worked for him for 4 years and I didn't know that. And nothing happened. There was no affair. There was no indiscretion. There was nothing. It was like a meeting of the souls where we both connected and went, oh my God, we had a chance to spend a bit of time together. Um, and we just recognized we had to be together. So, long story short, we left our respective spouses, but we were judged for a crime we didn't commit. Okay. So, you're asking me, what profound thing happened to me? The profound thing is I'll never judge anybody again who is, leaving their husband or having an affair or whatever. You don't know. You don't know what the soul contracts are. You don't know what the agreements are. You have no idea. And all you can do is step back. So I love to be able to share that little bit of dirty laundry out there, because I hope that it's real, it's relatable. I try to be as vulnerable as I can, and I think through those experiences, it taught me that there's no shame in that, and that I think I've helped more people than I hurt as a result of that, and so maybe some good came from that.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I have the two best ex-husbands ever, and I don't even refer to them as ex-husbands anymore because they're very, very special people. So,
That's wonderful, and thank you for being so open and vulnerable. When you've shared that information, it's great to see that things have resolved with the relationships with them as well. And actually, it would have been beneficial for them because I bet they've both moved forward in their lives and found, what's next for them as well. And,
mhm.
hopefully they've found happiness as well.
Well, it was really great for our kids to be able to see that it's possible to come out of a divorce and be really, still very close and very good friends and respect and have a lot of respect, even through all the turmoil and everything else. And again, I'm not proud of my story, but I don't mind sharing it because I feel that I just will not, I'm so happy in the relationship that I'm in right now. It's absolutely the right thing for me to do. I did finally, as a 16-7, we have a tendency to do what we think is right. That's that seven. And the six is that sense of responsibility to the home and the family. So we don't always choose ourselves. And we choose the wrong ones because we don't want to hurt anybody and we got to do the right thing. But this was the first time when I left my second husband to be with my current husband. It was the first time I did something for me. And I've never been happier. And I want to be able to share with people, you too can have that. You might go through a rough patch, but I got the t-shirts to say that, it's pretty good on the other side.
Yeah,
So,
that's really encouraging. I love that aspect of your journey and for bringing so much clarity into, that sort of karma associated with the 16 of the karmic lesson.
yeah,
We shouldn't call it a karmic debt, should we? We'll call it a karmic lesson and
sure.
how, it's helped you to evolve and
Yeah.
it's amazing. I've found that through these shows certain numbers have wanted to step forward and to really have clarity,
Hmm.
understood about what their meaning is. So I think today for me it's definitely been, although I know you work with the 22s and the other master numbers,
Oh, yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
16 and the 7 energy is has been a huge theme of today's show. So, as a last word, is there anything else that you feel that you would want to share to budding numerologists who are trying to develop both skill and intuition?
Mm. Um, I guess my philosophy would be there. I don't believe that there is a right way or a wrong way because short of waking up Pythagoras and saying, "Hey, bud, what did you mean by this?" All we can do is trust, and it's learning how to surrender and trust. Use your intuition more than the academics. Throw the books away. Once you understand the numbers from 1 to 9, honestly, if you have a really good understanding of that and you allow yourself to be intuitive and read people, You don't need all the textbooks. You don't need all of the bells and the whistles. You don't need to feel badly about yourself because you don't know how to calculate this or that. Don't worry about that. Just, I had a whole business session, some courses that I taught in business, and I called it Just Do You. And that's it. Like, just do you. There's somebody out there waiting for your interpretation of them. How long are you going to ask them to wait?
I love that. Oh, that's been such an enlightening conversation, and a huge thank you, to you for joining
Oh,
us today and sharing all of this wisdom and your warmth as well. You're such a warm person and your practical magic. So if you want to go deeper into, your own numbers and to follow Anne's inspiring content, then make sure to check her out. Her work on YouTube is a great place to start, which
hmm.
is and also your website, which is annperrynumerologist.com. How do they find you on YouTube, Anne?
Same. Ann Perry
Same.
Numerologist. Yep.
Easy
Same.
peasy lemon squeezy, isn't it?
You know it, right? It's the only way I do
Very, very
it.
easy.
Keep it
Well,
simple.
I'll put all the links in the description for you, Anne, as well, so people can easily connect with you after watching the show today. So please don't forget to like and subscribe as well to this channel. That would be amazing. And even leave a comment as well if you've loved Anne and if you've enjoyed the conversation, what your main takeaway from this conversation has been. We'd love to get your feedback as well. And please, yeah, if you can subscribe, it would be absolutely amazing. Really helps the channel to grow. And remember that your numbers are never random. They're the keys to your soul's evolution. So until next time, keep trusting and follow your own cosmic code. Bye for now.